I knew the moment I walked into the back room of that restaurant that something was wrong. This was not the relaxed family brunch my mother had promised over text. The lights were harsh, almost clinical. The table was too empty, too perfect. And sitting right in the center was a thick stack of documents, neatly aligned beside a pen I definitely hadn't brought with me. Before I could even sit down, I noticed him. A man in a tailored suit. Laptop already open. Not looking at a menu. Not looking around. Looking directly at me. That was the moment my stomach dropped. My mom smiled the way she always does when she thinks she's being reasonable, like everything unfolding was completely normal. "We just need to talk," she said lightly, taking her seat at the head of the table. "About what's fair after your father passed? My name is Sarah. I'm 28 years old. I work remotely in tech. I spend my days reading contracts, securing accounts, and spotting red flags before they turn into disasters. And every instinct in my body was screaming that this was a setup." The man in the suit finally stood and introduced himself as her attorney. That's when the papers were slid toward me. They weren't notes. They weren't discussion points. They were agreements. Legal language filled the pages. Words like redistribution, voluntary transfer, family settlement. I hadn't even finished reading the first paragraph before my mother folded her hands and looked at me like a disappointed judge. "All you have to do," the lawyer said calmly, "is sign here." What he meant was simple. Transfer most of what my father left me back into something they controlled. For the good of the family. When I said no, the air in the room shifted. Smiles vanished. Voices hardened. Suddenly, this wasn't about fairness anymore. They hinted at court, at delays, at legal fees, and how difficult this could become for me if I didn't cooperate. My heart was racing, but somewhere deep in my head, I heard my father's voice reminding me of one thing. Know who actually has the law on their side. I looked around the table slowly. Then I started counting, out loud. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They stared at me, confused. "You're a lot of people," I said quietly. That's when I smiled for the first time that day. "Funny thing is," I added, "I only brought one person too." If you want to know who walked through that door moments later, and how this meeting became the worst mistake my mother ever made, stay with me until the end. Because I wasn't always the woman sitting across from lawyers and contracts. For most of my life, I was just a kid growing up in a quiet San Diego suburb, believing family meant movie nights, grocery runs, and my dad's terrible programming jokes. My father, Richard, was a software engineer at a small tech firm. He wasn't flashy. He drove the same aging Honda for years because, in his words, it still starts, doesn't it? He packed leftovers for lunch, paid bills early, checked his accounts weekly. My mother hated that life. She wanted gated communities, luxury cars, vacation photos that looked good online. When I was 15, the difference between them finally became impossible to ignore. I still remember that night at the kitchen table. My dad had printed bank statements laid out neatly. My mom had Pinterest boards open on her tablet. Vacation homes, dream kitchens, infinity pools. She said she was tired of scraping by. He said he was tired of pretending. California is a community property state, which meant everything they built together got split right down the middle. To my mom, it was an opportunity. To my dad, it was losing half of everything he worked for, while still paying support. After the divorce, I stayed mostly with my dad in a modest condo near Carlsbad. Nothing fancy, but at night, if I cracked the window open, I could hear the ocean. On Fridays, he'd let me choose dinner from DoorDash. We'd eat straight from the containers on the couch, watching whatever Netflix recommended. That's when he taught me real-life lessons. How credit scores worked, why budgets mattered, why looking rich and being stable were two very different things. While other parents bragged about new cars, my dad bragged about paying off credit cards every month. My mom moved to Orange County and reinvented herself almost overnight. She married Victor, a real estate agent who sold homes that looked like magazine covers. Suddenly, her social media was full of backyard parties and wine tastings. She had a new family now. 2 kids, Mia and Ethan, always smiling in matching outfits. I was still her daughter, technically, but I felt more like an extra in someone else's perfect picture. She didn't call to ask how school was going. She called to talk about Mia's achievements, Ethan's future, and money. My dad would come home from those calls quieter, more tired, but he always recovered the same way, by making popcorn on the stove and reminding me, "You don't owe anyone your future just because they share your last name." At the time, it sounded dramatic. I didn't know he was already planning ahead, meeting with attorneys, updating documents, protecting me. I thought the worst was behind us. I was wrong. I used to think that the worst thing that could happen in life was watching your parents divorce. I was wrong. Nothing prepares you for the phone call that tells you the one person who made everything feel stable is suddenly gone. My dad was careful in a way that bordered on annoying. Seatbelts checked twice. No texting while driving. He avoided night drives whenever possible. So when I got the call about a car accident on the I-5, my first thought wasn't fear. It was disbelief. That kind of thing doesn't happen to people like him. But it did. It was a rainy Tuesday night. He stayed late at work to finish a software deployment because he didn't like leaving things half done. On the drive home, a drowsy driver drifted across lanes. Cars slammed together. Traffic froze. By the time I arrived at the hospital, there was nothing left to fix. There is a very specific silence that follows news like that. Not crying, not screaming, just emptiness, like someone erased the future and didn't bother saving a backup. The funeral was small and understated. No dramatic speeches, no luxury venue. Exactly how my dad would have wanted it. A few coworkers from his tech company, a couple of neighbors from the condo building. People who knew him as the quiet, reliable guy who helped fix Wi-Fi and brought extra snacks to meetings. I stood near his urn, nodding at people, thanking them, trying to stay upright. Then my mom arrived. Black dress, perfect hair, Victor at her side, Mia and Ethan positioned just behind them. She cried loudly. Held people a little too long. Repeated the same lines about heartbreak and loss. Watching her felt surreal. She hadn't loved this man for years, but she knew how to play the role. After the service, while people slowly drifted toward the parking lot, a woman approached me. She didn't rush. Didn't interrupt. Navy blazer, practical heels, the calm confidence of someone who spends their life dealing with emotional messes. She introduced herself as Elena. I was your father's attorney, she said. Those words landed heavier than anything else that day. We sat at a metal picnic table outside the church, paper coffee cups between us, wind pushing at the programs people had left behind. That's when she started explaining things. My dad had been meticulous. After the divorce, he didn't just update his will once. He reviewed it, revised it, confirmed it, more than once. He specifically asked about potential pressure from his ex-wife. Elena didn't say my mother's name. She didn't have to. She explained the difference between community property and separate property in California. What belonged to my parents together during marriage, what became my dad's alone after the divorce. Everything he earned and built after that point was his, and he left it to me. The condo in Carlsbad, his brokerage accounts, stock holdings, index funds, retirement accounts rolled properly to avoid penalties. Not sudden wealth, not reckless money, just the result of years of discipline and sacrifice. I expected guilt to hit me. Instead, I felt something closer to safety, like he had thought several steps ahead, even after he was gone. Elena explained probate slowly, carefully, how the court would validate the will, how assets would transfer legally, how challenges were possible, but only with real legal grounds. Then she looked me straight in the eye. Your father wanted you protected, she said. He was very clear about that. Protected. That word stuck with me, because less than 5 minutes later my phone buzzed. A text from my mom. Long, emotional, strategically written. She talked about family, about fairness, about how your father would want us to handle this together. She didn't ask if I was okay. She asked when we could discuss the estate. At first I tried to stay calm. I replied politely. Mentioned probate. Mentioned that my dad had an attorney. She ignored all of that. Instead, she asked for estimates. Numbers. When I didn't answer quickly, the guilt started. She reminded me how expensive raising a child is. How much she had done for me. How Mia and Ethan would need help soon. The phrase kept repeating. You need to think about the family. I forwarded every message to Elena. She told me something very simple. Do not share numbers. Do not sign anything. Do not agree privately. If my mom wanted to contest the will, she could do it in court. The more I held my ground, the more her tone changed. Voicemails about legal fees, warnings about delays, hints about how messy things could get, all wrapped in concern. I stopped replying. I started documenting dates, times, exact wording. My dad used to say money doesn't create problems, it reveals them. A few weeks later, probate closed. Everything transferred into my name. Elena sent a neat folder and a calm email outlining next steps. Less than a day later, my mom emailed me too. Subject line, family meeting. She wrote about clearing the air, finding balance, keeping things private. She suggested a restaurant in Irvine, a private room. Just us, she said. Reading it, I felt that familiar knot tighten. My dad had followed every rule, and somehow I was still being hunted. I forwarded the email to Elena with one question. "Will you come with me?" She didn't hesitate. "I'll be there," she said. "You're not walking into this alone." That's when I understood something clearly. This wasn't grief anymore. This was strategy. And my mother had already chosen her move. The morning of the meeting, I woke up before my alarm. My stomach already felt tight, like my body knew something my brain was still pretending to ignore. I showered, got dressed, and packed my bag carefully. Not makeup, not anything dramatic. Documents, copies of the will, probate confirmation, printouts of emails and texts, a small notebook with dates and notes written in my own handwriting. It felt strange preparing paperwork instead of emotions, but I reminded myself of something my dad used to say. If someone wants to control you, they'll try to rush you. Paperwork slows them down. Elena and I had already agreed on a plan. I would arrive first, see who was there, see what they put in front of me. She would stay nearby and only come in if I asked. That way, no one could claim they were ambushed, even though that's exactly what they were trying to do to me. The restaurant was one of those places that looks expensive without being loud about it. Soft lighting, muted music, water glasses that never seemed to empty. The hostess led me past couples and business lunches toward the back. The further we walked, the quieter it got. Then she stopped in front of a frosted glass door with a small sign that read, "Private." She opened it. The moment I stepped inside, every nerve in my body went on alert. The room was too bright. The table was perfectly clean. No menus, no plates, just a pitcher of water and paperwork. My mom sat at the head of the table, posture straight, hands folded like she was running a meeting. Victor sat to her right, blazer tight, jaw clenched. Across from them were Mia and Ethan, quiet, uncomfortable. And next to them, a man in a gray suit. Laptop open. Screen already awake. Eyes on me, not the door. No one stood up to greet me. "Sarah," my mom said brightly, "you made it." Like I'd shown up early to help decorate for a party. I sat down slowly, my bag resting against my chair. The man in the suit finally stood and introduced himself. "Daniel," he said, extending a hand. "I'm an attorney assisting the family." The family. The way he said it made my skin crawl. Before I could respond, he slid a stack of papers toward me. They were already clipped together. My name was printed neatly on the top page. I didn't touch them yet. My mom leaned forward slightly. "We just want to talk," she said softly. "No fighting, no court, just a fair solution." Daniel began explaining in that calm, professional voice lawyers use when they want something to sound reasonable. This, he said, was a family settlement agreement. It would allow us to rebalance the estate in a way that reflected the current family structure. That phrase stood out immediately. I finally glanced down at the numbers. My chest tightened. They weren't asking for a small adjustment. They wanted 65%. Transferred into a shared trust, managed jointly, irrevocable once signed. 65% of everything my father left me. Daniel said it like he was suggesting we split an appetizer. "This avoids unnecessary litigation," he continued. "It protects relationships. It protects your credit. It keeps things private." My mom nodded along. "Your father didn't account for reality," she added. "Things are different now." She gestured toward Mia and Ethan. "College is expensive. Life is expensive. Fairness. That word again." I didn't respond immediately. I let the silence stretch. Because silence makes people uncomfortable, and uncomfortable people reveal more. Victor shifted in his seat. Mia stared at the table. Ethan checked his phone like he wanted to disappear. Daniel cleared his throat. "No one is trying to take anything from you," my mom said quickly. I almost laughed, because that's exactly what the papers were designed to do. Instead, I asked a simple question. "If I don't sign this," I said calmly, "what happens?" The room changed. Daniel folded his hands. "Then things could become complicated." He talked about delays, legal fees, public records, how probate disputes can drag on for years, how stress affects people's lives. My mom leaned in. "We're giving you a chance to do the right thing," she said. "You're not the only one who lost something." That sentence landed wrong, because I was the only one who lost my father. I looked around the table slowly. At my mother, at Victor, at two teenagers who barely knew the man they were benefiting from, at a lawyer billing by the hour. Then I spoke. "How many people are here?" I asked quietly. My mom frowned. "What does that matter?" I didn't answer her. I counted. 1, I said, nodding toward her. 2, Victor. 3, 4, Mia and Ethan. I paused, then looked at Daniel. 5. The room went completely still. You're a lot of people, I said. My mom's patience cracked. Sarah, this isn't funny. I smiled. For the first time since I walked in, I felt steady. You're right, I said. It's not. I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. I didn't look at it. I already knew what I was going to send. 1 word. Then I placed the phone face down on the table, right next to the pen they wanted me to use. Funny thing is, I added, I only brought one person too. There was a knock on the door. Sharp, deliberate. The hostess opened it, and a woman in a navy blazer stepped inside. Elena. She smiled politely. Hi, Laura, she said. I understand you wanted to discuss Sarah's inheritance. No one spoke. And in that moment, I knew this meeting had just gone very wrong, for them. After Elena walked into that room, everything changed. Not loudly, not dramatically, but permanently. My mom didn't yell. She didn't cry. She stood up slowly, lips pressed tight. The same way people do when they've just lost something expensive and don't want to show it. Victor followed her without a word. Their lawyer muttered something about reviewing options as he gathered his laptop. No one looked at me on the way out. Elena and I stayed seated for a few minutes after they left. My hands were shaking so badly I had to press them flat against my thighs to steady myself. You did exactly what you should have done, Elena said calmly. You didn't argue, you didn't sign, and now there's a witness. I nodded, but my chest still felt tight. Part of me wanted to believe that was the end, that the embarrassment of being exposed would make my mom back off. For 3 days, my phone was silent. No texts, no voicemails, no guilt-soaked messages. I almost relaxed. Then the messages came back. Different this time. Colder, long paragraphs about disappointment, about how my father would be ashamed, about how money had changed me. No more pretending this was about family. This was about control. One message stood out. You're making this much harder than it needs to be. Paperwork can get messy if people don't cooperate. I forwarded everything to Elena. She didn't sugarcoat her response. If she can't move you emotionally, she said, she may try financially. That sentence sat with me all night, so I did what my dad taught me to do when something felt off. I locked things down, every account, every password, every login. I changed credentials for my bank, brokerage, retirement platforms, enabled 2-factor authentication everywhere, updated security questions with answers no one could guess. Then I froze my credit with all 3 major bureaus. It felt extreme, but it also felt smart. My dad used to say your identity is worth more than the money sitting in your account. A few days later, I got an email that almost fooled me. Same logo as my bank, same colors, same tone. Subject line, important action required. The only reason I didn't click immediately was timing. I had just updated security settings. The universe is rarely that obvious. I hovered over the link. The URL was close, but not exact. My stomach dropped. I didn't click. Instead, I called my bank using the number on the back of my card. They confirmed it. No security emails had been sent, but there had been a failed login attempt from an unfamiliar device on one of my investment accounts. The representative helped me lock everything down further and suggested I file reports, both with their fraud department and law enforcement. Sitting alone in my kitchen, Netflix paused on something stupid. I explained to a detective that my own mother might be trying to access my accounts. He told me to submit everything to the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center. That felt surreal. This wasn't some overseas scammer. This was my family. Still, I filled out the report. Screenshots, email headers, banknotes. Elena reviewed it all. You did the right thing, she said. If this escalates, documentation is everything. That's when I realized something else I needed to protect. My physical space. I ordered a Ring doorbell and 2 small security cameras the same afternoon. They arrived 2 days later. Installing them felt ridiculous and empowering at the same time. One pointed toward the front entrance. One covered the mailbox area. I told myself it was precaution. I didn't expect them to show up. For a while, nothing happened. Notifications came in for delivery drivers and neighbors. Life almost felt normal again. One night, unable to sleep, I posted an anonymous version of my story on a legal advice forum. Changed names, changed locations. But the situation was real. The responses flooded in. Do not meet her alone. Keep everything in writing. This is no longer family drama. This is fraud. Reading those comments grounded me. I wasn't paranoid. I was prepared. 2 weeks later, on a Tuesday afternoon, my phone buzzed during a work call. Motion detected. I glanced at the thumbnail. My breath caught. Victor's SUV, parked outside my building. I muted my mic and opened the live feed. Victor sat in the driver's seat. Engine running. Laptop open on his knees. Then another alert. Motion detected near mailbox. The second camera showed my mom, standing there, phone to her ear, looking around. At the exact same moment, my banking app sent a notification. Unrecognized device attempting to access your account. Everything lined up. My mom at my mailbox. Victor in the car with a laptop. My account being probed. I hit screen record. Captured everything. Later, I pulled logs from my bank. Timestamps. IP address. Failed login attempt. They matched the camera footage down to the minute. I sent it all to Elena. She called immediately. "This is attempted identity theft," she said. "This is no longer a negotiation." The next day, we filed a formal police report and updated the FBI complaint. Crossing that line felt heavy, but so did watching my mother try to steal from me. That was the moment everything shifted. I wasn't defending an inheritance anymore. I was exposing a crime, and soon a judge would see it all. I always thought courtrooms only looked intimidating on TV. Polished wood, high ceilings, people speaking in calm voices about devastating things. The real one in downtown San Diego felt heavier, like the walls themselves had absorbed years of lies, regrets, and people insisting they were the victim. I sat at the plaintiff's table beside Elena, my hands wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had gone cold minutes ago. Across the room sat my mother. Laura, perfect posture, neutral expression. Victor beside her, jaw tight, eyes fixed forward. They didn't look at me. The judge entered, and everything else faded into the background. This wasn't a family dispute anymore. This was evidence. Elena stood first. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't dramatize. She laid things out step by step. The will, the probate confirmation, the documented pressure campaign, texts, emails, voicemails, then the digital trail. She requested permission to play video evidence. The screen lit up. My front door camera, my mailbox. My mother appeared on screen, phone to her ear, glancing around like she was afraid of being seen. Victor's SUV followed. The timestamp was visible. Then Elena displayed the bank logs. Failed login attempt. Unrecognized device. Exact same minute. The courtroom was silent. Even the judge leaned forward. Elena explained how phishing emails had been sent, how access attempts aligned with physical presence, how this wasn't accidental or misunderstood. It was coordinated. When the judge turned to my mother, something finally cracked. Laura tried to speak, then stopped. Victor's attorney whispered something urgently. The judge raised a hand. "No," he said calmly. "I've seen enough." He ruled that the will stood without modification, that any further attempts to contest it would be considered harassment. Then came the part I didn't expect. He referred the attempted account access and impersonation to the district attorney for further review. Fraud, identity theft, conspiracy, words that don't sound dramatic until they're applied to people you grew up calling family. My mother's face drained of color. Victor finally looked at me. Not angry, afraid. The hearing ended quietly. No shouting, no breakdown, just consequences. Outside the courthouse, Elena turned to me. "You did everything right," she said. "Most people don't document. You did." I nodded, but I didn't feel victorious. I felt finished. A week later, the fallout began. Victor's real estate license was suspended pending investigation. My mother received a formal no-contact order. Friends stopped commenting on her social media posts. The perfect family photos disappeared. The house she loved showing off went quietly up for sale. I never heard an apology, and I didn't need one. Because my father was right. You don't owe anyone your future just because they share your last name. I still live in the same condo. I still work remotely. Some nights, I open the window and listen to the ocean. The money my dad left me didn't change who I am, but it did expose who others were. And that private restaurant meeting, that was the moment my mother thought she could corner me. Instead, she walked straight into the consequences she'd been avoiding her entire life. And I walked out free.